everyone. My name is Nicole. I'm the community manager at Moneymentals, which is an online personal finance course that is designed and run by certified financial planner Michael Goldman. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Nicole.
Yeah, so I really like the course because, budgeting has always been kind of a pain in the butt. And
Yeah,
this basically is sort of like keeping an eye on your money without writing down that you spent like $2.50 buying coffee today or something like that.
yeah.
So those of you who want to know more about the course or see some of the other resources, you can just go to moneymentals.com. But for now, Michael, we get a coffee today.
Oh, okay. Let's see what you got.
I mean you, because you're answering it. I'm just asking on behalf of our listeners / watchers here. Okay, so here it is. Dear Michael, someone mentioned a SEP IRA to me the other day.
Yep.
Okay, as an option for my small business,
Mhm.
a 401k or IRA. All these acronyms are making my head spin, and I'm just a small business owner who wants to offer an employee benefit. So how do I figure out what's best to do without talking to someone who's trying to sell me something?
This is a complicated one, actually. I wish there was a simple answer, and the alphabet soup is a real problem with retirement plan structure.
So are the three that they mentioned, is that kind of the main three?
Yeah, although there's more. So one of the big determinants there too is he says a small business owner, and then he mentions something about, and I'm saying he, I don't know, it might be she, mentions something about an employee benefit, so I'm wondering, okay, is this a sole proprietor, or is this does this person actually have one or more employees? And so which retirement plans can be fit dependent on, in part, on that, whether you have employees or not, and also how you're structured, whether you're actually, an LLC or an S corp, or some incorporated business, versus if you're just sole proprietor that's reporting income on your Schedule C on your taxes. The business structure matters. Whether or not you have employees and how many you have matters. Okay. And the other thing that tends to matter is how much money you want to be able to tax defer. In other words, how much you feel able to contribute. So the different types of plans have different rules in terms of how much can be contributed each year. Roughly speaking, it runs right now between about $5,500 on the lower end of things. There's some plans in some circumstances that you can contribute up to $53,000 a year, depending on if you have to make that much, or quite a bit more than that. But anyway, so I mean, it really runs the gamut.
So somebody would have to talk to somebody, like a
so that's
CPA
kind of one of those where you kind of have to talk with someone. And so I think the good question there is, how do I find someone to talk to about this stuff that isn't trying to sell me something? So what you're looking for is what's called a fee-only financial advisor or financial planner, fee-only financial planner that, and here's the trick even with that, is finding one that will work on a project or an hourly basis.
Okay.
So let me break that down a little bit. So fee-only means that they only get paid by their client. They don't get commissions. They don't get referral fees or kickbacks for recommending certain products or things like that to you. Financial planner, usually the standard for that, there's different designations, but I think the most commonly accepted one in the industry at this point is a certified financial planner, CFP. So it's good to look for somebody who has the CFP designation that works in a fee-only, not fee-based, but fee-only
Okay.
manner. But even once you get there, a lot of times it's hard to find somebody that will answer just questions like this on, limited engagement. A lot of fee-only financial advisors mostly do investment management, and they have minimums in order to work with them. You might have to have, $500,000 or $1 million in assets that you want them to manage before they'll work with you. Well, not everyone's got that. So there's two really good sources I would tell you to go look for a fee-only financial planner that will work on a project basis. One of them is the Garrett Planning Network, and it's garrettplanning.com. And the other one is the XY Planning Network. Both of those organizations, everyone who's in them has to be fee only, and either have their CFP or be a candidate, meaning that they almost got it, they just haven't gotten all the experience requirements out of the way yet. They also, in both cases, have to agree that they offer services on at least some either hourly or project-based basis where it can be more limited term. So I would look at both of those networks. A lot of the people in those networks, if you don't find one that is in your locality, a lot of them will work virtually, particularly in the XY Planning Network. I think they all have to agree that they'll work virtually to be part of that network.
Okay, so like if I'm based in a certain state, I don't have to work with somebody who's also in my state. I wasn't sure how so I could work with somebody. So if someone was in another state, they could work with you even though you're based in Maine.
Yeah, and also sometimes what happens, and there are limitations there, and so you have to talk to the advisor in terms of what their restrictions are. In general, you want somebody that's at least licensed in your state, but they don't necessarily have to be in your locality. I mean, in Maine, as you know, you live up in Bar Harbor. I'm down toward Portland. I mean, there's 5-6 hours time to get between the two. So, even though we're in the same state, we're not really that convenient to one another. But through the magic of video conferencing, that doesn't really matter so much anymore.
Right. And so is this something, I mean, not to get too into Moneymentals, is this something that you could sort of advise someone, or if someone was in the Moneymentals course and you had that sort of relationship with them as a course participant, you could send them some resources or whatever to help them make this decision?
Yeah, sort of, and that's a good question, because it's sort of like, what are the limits around what we can do in Moneymentals? So Moneymentals, the course is really about a cash flow method, and in a group kind of teaching environment, we're not allowed to give individualized investment advice. And when you're starting to talk about retirement accounts and that kind of stuff, I can direct you toward information, to give you education around the different retirement account types. But certainly, if we were going to talk specifically about like this contributor's question, we would have to have an advisory relationship, and so we'd have to do something outside of that. And by the way, when these things come up in the course, if somebody's looking for a financial advisor, it's not always me or my firm. Usually, a lot of times I'll say, hey, where are you located? Let me take a look on the Garrett in the XY Planning Network searches and see if there's somebody close to you, because I still think it's nice to work with somebody either that you can meet face to face, or if you can't, at least knows your state well, because sometimes there's a little bit of differences in what the options are on some things. It comes up a lot with like college savings accounts and also tax issues. They vary from state to state, so it's good to work with somebody that at least is knowledgeable about the financials in your state. So.
Right. Well, I think one of the advantages of the Moneymentals course, and if you want to learn more about it, you can go to moneymentals.com, is that you have access to someone like Michael. So it's not just somebody who was like, oh, I created this course because I like money, and I figured this out. And as a former personal finance blogger, I can sort of appreciate that, but there is a level of skill and experience that Michael brings to the table. And even if he can't give participants direct advice, he can at least send people to good resources. Because let's face it, a lot of this stuff is knowing what to look up, right? And what applies to you when you do look it up. Otherwise, you're on WebMD looking up your symptoms and you have cancer. That's why you go to the doctor. They can steer away from the cancer and point you toward a couple of resources. So yeah. So Michael, thanks so much for answering the question, and we hope to see some of you guys on the Moneymentals course soon. Take care.
All right. Thanks, everyone.